You are listening to INTERFORM Podcast with Ro on the radio. You're going to want to hear this.
All right. Welcome to INTERFORM Podcast. It's me, your girl, Ro on the radio, and I've got a special guest. I say that every time, but all my guests are special. It is Seth Caelum. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of INTERFORM Podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Tell the people a little bit about you and if they've never met you before. First of all, Seth is a model and Seth was in the Model Citizen editorial campaigns with the chiseled facial structure and all that. So I just want to make sure everybody knew that.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about you.
Well, my name is Seth Caelum, and I was born and raised in NWA. And
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm a mixed media visual artist and model. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this episode, we are talking about what it means to be non-binary, kind of giving you a little bit more understanding about the non-binary community. And Seth wants to share a little bit about that with you. And Seth, tell me what does it mean to people who may not know? What does it mean to be non-binary?
It's hard because I feel like non-binary and gender is very much a individualistic, spiritual, personal, way to express yourself when it comes to gender. For me, for instance, I understand that my soul is both masculine and feminine. It's made up of both masculine and feminine energy. And then when it comes to my shell or my exterior, it can be perceived as he. And so being non-binary to me kind of just is an outward display of my soul's expression of itself, if that makes sense. So basically, by me being non-binary and by me having they, them pronouns, it shows that, or expresses from me anyways,
Right.
that I am separate from the shell. And so it's a lot more of I want people to see me as more of, a feminine nurturing type. I'm not going to be that big brooding masculine man that you would expect.
Right.
Yeah.
So when did you realize that this is how you wanted people to see you, or realize that you are not what society thinks you are or wants you to be or tries to force you to be? What age were you when you decided the shell is not how I want to be perceived? I would prefer to use pronouns and I am of the non-binary community.
So I'm 21 now, but I was around 19 when I started to come to terms and understand, because for a while I didn't even fully understand what non-binary meant.
Okay.
And then once I did understand, and I was like, oh wait, that's me. That's how I would express myself. That's kind of when I started, or that's when I changed my pronouns and started to come out and be hey, I would rather be addressed this way. But I feel deep down I had always known, because I remember being in fifth grade, or I say fifth grade, 5 years old, and I everybody would be playing, and the tomboys are sitting there playing with their sticks and their frogs or whatever, and then there would be me, and I'm just sitting there and I'm twirling in a visionary dress that's not there, and you can see that I wasn't, that sticks and mud kind of boy. I was oh, I liked prettier things. And I feel that, got shut down from outside influences quite a bit. But then once I grew into my authenticity and I was okay, I can express myself, I can express my gender, that's when I decided to come out and be hey, my pronouns, I would rather be referred to as they, them.
Got it. What about your parents? How was that when you decided to come out? Did you come out to them first, or did you wait and then try to have a conversation with your parents? How did that go?
So that's actually the interesting fact, is I am out to everybody and accept my parents.
Oh, okay.
So
do I need to cut that part out if
No,
they see it?
You're all good. You're all
Okay.
good.
Okay. Just want to be sure.
Nah, if they see it, it's the sign that it's time for them to know.
Okay.
But yeah, I actually are very conservative, and they very much have the like black and white view of gender and expression. And even my mom, like, she'll see me and she's like, you've always just like walked the line a little bit, or it's like, is that a woman's blouse? And I'm like, yeah, actually, I feel like it looks nice. And she's gotten to a point where she understands that, and she can be like, okay, well, it looks good. You made it look good. But as for like the official pronouns, I'm not out to them yet.
Okay.
So I feel like with pronouns and coming out, especially when it comes to gender and your sexuality, it's like, it needs to definitely be on your time when you find fit. Because when it comes to like me introducing myself to everybody else, I'm like, hey, pronouns are they, them, just to let you know. But when it comes to them, I'm like, I'm going to give this one some time, let them, my sexuality soak in first.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your name, because we were talking about that before we started recording. Seth Caelum. Tell me about the last name, because this is so cool, y'all. You got to listen.
So I was about 17 when I found the name Caelum, but I decided to go and change my name and start my own legacy, kind of to put, instead of having all of the pressure and like, I don't know exactly the word I'm trying to find, but the projection, I guess you would say, onto my name of me having to be a certain way and fit into this box. And it just felt like that didn't really resonate with me. And I wanted to start my own legacy and be like, this is who I am. And like an affirmation of like me standing in my power. And I found the name Caelum, and it just resonated in a way that I had never felt before. And when I looked up the meanings, it meant heavenly and chiseled.
Okay, that's the part that I wanted y'all to really pay attention to. Chiseled, like, you see, so it's perfect. There's no other name that would work. So
I mean, I appreciate that one.
You can choose whatever name, but I'm just saying Caelum is an amazing name. How did you find support when you decided that this is who I am, this is my name? Did you find support in your peers? Did you find support in people who are older than you? Because I feel like the older you get, the less you understand.
Yeah.
And I could be wrong. There may be some boomers who get it, but I feel like sometimes we have to find our support system within our own peer group, in our own age group. Is that how you found your support?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I feel like there's, on occasional instances, there'll be like boomers that are pretty woke and understand things.
Okay.
It's kind of harder to find those,
Yes.
But I feel like with me, I started really acting authentic to myself. And when I started expressing myself without putting the limitations of what other people thought I should look like, but I started having fun and making it a like day to day of like, oh, I can wear whatever I want. I'm going to enjoy this for me and not care about the outside. It was like little changes like that attracted a different group of people. And I feel like the more I was in line with my energy and not the projected energy that was put onto me, I feel like I've had this support system just like come together of like true understanding people, both part of the non-binary community and both that aren't part of the non-binary community. And I feel like there's been definitely a different level of understanding. And I feel like when you start being authentic to yourself and expressing that, you'll attract those people that do the same, that match that wave, and your support system will come together.
I like that. It sounds like you basically started being more comfortable with yourself, and you exude this confidence that attracts other people. Because sometimes when you are not sure about yourself, you can attract people. It might be the wrong people, but when you're confident in your like you said, walking in your power, then other people see that and they either want to do the same thing or they feel the same way and want to be around someone who's like-minded. Now, when I have this, when I was younger, there was a term called androgynous.
Yeah.
Like my biggest idol in this whole wide world is Grace Jones. And Grace Jones was considered to be androgynous because she is a woman who presented masculine features because she had super short hair and she presented as a little aggressive, and Prince presented as androgynous because he wore high heels and makeup. David Bowie. So what would you say the difference is between androgynous and non-binary?
I feel like, so androgyny, I feel like is a visual aesthetic that a lot of people try to hit, while non-binary is more of a broad spectrum over several gender identities and several different types of gender expressions.
Wow.
So I feel like androgyny would be just one point that would hit a certain demographic underneath that umbrella of non-binary, but not necessarily be the whole spiel.
That makes so much sense, because when you say that, and androgynous to me is just like an outward appearance. It's not the core of who someone is. It's just how they look, right?
Truly, yeah.
It seems a little bit more aesthetic than being non-binary. I feel like being non-binary is like inside in your soul and how you feel, and not just in how you look.
Yeah, because with being non-binary, you can express yourselves a million different ways. I mean, if you're non-binary but you feel like you want to present yourself more masculine on a certain day, you can do that no matter what your like assigned gender at birth was. Well, like androgyny is, a lot of people, like I've noticed, really, really like androgyny, whether they are presenting it themselves or they're just drawn to it. And it's just, a very individual experience on how people decide to walk that line.
Absolutely. What would you say to someone who is non-binary but is having trouble finding a support system, or basically deciding who they are and how to be more comfortable in their own skin? Like, what advice would you give to someone?
Definitely one step at a time. I mean, we're here for like 100 years as of now. Mm-hmm. And, you don't have to just like wake up and put all this pressure on you and be like, I don't feel like a man today. Like, what am I? And all that. It's like, it can be very overwhelming. It is a very strong feelings when it comes to certain things like that.
Right.
But if you just take it and you realize like, hey, like, how do I want to express myself? Like, if you go in and you just kind of take those little steps on being truer to yourself and do just minor things that, push you out of your comfort zone, but are something that you want to do, whether that's expressing yourself, acting a certain way, telling your best friend your pronouns, but like, hey, keep it between us, but just so like, I want to try this out. Like, just little things like that can really help not only make you start feeling the power and being seen for who you truly are, but you'll start to see the support system kind of come together. And
that makes sense. I feel like people may think that there is a time limit. Like, I have to decide this now. I have to decide who I am right now and be that person going forward. And what you said is take your time. It's not an overnight process. It's not an overnight thing. It's something that you grow into. It's something that you feel. It's something you kind of experiment with. Maybe this works for you. Maybe this doesn't. And you have to give yourself time to be confident enough to make that decision to tell people what your pronouns are. I like that.
Truly, yeah, because you're constantly evolving. I feel like you can't just put a time limit on your evolution. Like, you need to be able to just
that's a word.
grow.
I like that. How I would ask this. What's something that you want people who don't understand? And we talked about this before we started recording, but like I said, I'm of two minds when it comes to explaining things to people. I feel like on one hand, I think it is helpful to educate people on different communities, on the non-binary community, so that maybe if they understand, then they would have a level of respect. But I am also of the mind that you don't have to understand who someone is to show them respect. So do you feel a responsibility to educate people? Is that something that is tiresome to you, or that you dread it? Because I feel like sometimes for example, in the Black community, sometimes I don't feel like I should have to explain to you why I require the same respect as anyone else. I don't have to explain to you our history. I don't have to explain to you why you can't touch my hair. But at the same time, one day I may feel like, you know what, this may be helpful to somebody, and maybe they will think twice before they say certain things or do certain things. And if we understand each other, maybe we can get along a lot better. Do you feel a responsibility to educate people on the non-binary community? Not just with this podcast, but like when you're out in the world and someone asks you a question, do you get irritated, or do you see this as an opportunity to educate them?
I definitely see it as an opportunity to educate. So it depends on different tones and
for sure
the way they're approaching you. But I feel like it's really important that everybody's kind of got that understanding, and that it's not a scary thing, because I could catch a lot of hate by wearing a shawl and presenting myself more feminine. But if you were to come ask and you realize I'm no harm to you, I'm just here's how I choose to express myself, and it's all very much individual feeling from person to person,
right.
Expressing that not everybody's going to get it, and that's not on you, that's on them. But I think it is important to educate. I feel like definitely it is up to that person that you are educating or that you're teaching. It's up to them to actually take that knowledge and not necessarily agree with it, but retain it and be understanding. But if they're not, you can't sit around and wait on them, because it's more important to understand yourself.
Right. You did your part.
Yeah.
They can either choose to accept the feedback and information that you gave them, or they can't. But at least you can say, when you leave that situation, that I educated this person the best way I knew how, and they chose to either receive it or not receive it. What are some things that you want people to know about the non-binary community that they may not otherwise know? Is it okay for someone to assume that you have pronouns? For someone who doesn't even know you, just walk up to you and be like, what are your pronouns? Does that offend you, or how does that make you feel?
It makes me feel seen. It's something that it makes me feel seen for who I am. And I feel like when I get asked my pronouns, I know I'm doing what I was put on this earth to do.
Great.
Because I feel like when they're like, hey, what are your pronouns? And I get the opportunity to say they, them. And I feel like that enough is educating. That enough is educating towards people
who automatically assume that. I feel like in a way what you're saying is it's kind of a relief, right? Instead of having to correct someone that misgenders you, then they already know. So they are already leading with respect, right?
Yeah, it comes in. I don't feel like I have to approach it and be like, hey, just so you know, and I don't have to be fearful for their action or reaction to what I have to say. It makes me feel seen in a sense of okay, I'm my inner is being expressed on the outer, if that makes sense. So
that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, I feel like it definitely makes me feel like I've expressed myself in a way that does my internal justice.
That people actually get it and they actually
Yes.
see you. That is powerful about being seen. Do you get upset when people misgender you automatically and just call you he?
No.
Okay.
It doesn't.
Okay.
I understand why it would be upsetting
Okay.
for people because it can be triggering. And I
Right.
have, like, when people do know and I get called he, sometimes I'm just like, that wasn't me, but I understand.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I understand is because, I was talking about how I feel there's a separation between your soul and your body.
Your shell.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like my shell, it is a he. So no, you weren't wrong. But that's because you're only using your eyes.
Oh.
But once you actually have like that understanding, like my soul, who I am at my core, is they, them. It is both the masculine and the feminine.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts before we close the episode? If someone wants to maybe talk to you, maybe get some feedback or advice from you, is that okay? Can they reach out to you maybe on your Instagram? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to, if you guys want to reach out, I would love to be able to help and, like hear some of your stories and maybe share mine because, I've had a crazy story when it comes to my sexuality and my upbringing.
Right.
And I feel like I can understand from several different perspectives when it comes to that. And I would just, if you have any questions, I'm here to support. I'm here to educate. Doesn't matter if you're part of the community or you're just curious about the community.
That's great. I love that you're so positive and willing to educate people. Like I said, I go back and forth. Sometimes I'm in the mood to educate people and sometimes I'm like annoyed and I dread it and I feel like I shouldn't have to, but I really appreciate your perspective and I appreciate you coming on the show. Tell people where you can be reached. What's your Instagram?
My Instagram is just going to be my name. It's going to be Seth Caelum.
Okay.
Caelum.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Seth, for joining me. That was INTERFORM Podcast. I'm Ro on the radio. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. It's interform.art and Facebook. It's Interform Fashion. You can also visit our website. It's www.interform.art. Thank you so much, Seth.
Thank you.
You are listening to INTERFORM Podcast with Ro on the radio. You're going to want to hear this.